Hey, what is up, everyone? Today we got a pretty cool story. It's narrated by Frederick Surrey. So get cozy, enjoy it, and watch it till the end, guys.
In the grim darkness of the far future, where humanity clings to survival across a million worlds, there exists a priesthood unlike any other. They do not worship gods of war or vengeful spirits. They do not offer prayers to distant deities dwelling in the warp. Instead, they kneel before altars of brass and steel, chanting binary hymns to the Omnissiah, the machine god, whose divine wisdom flows through every circuit and cogitator in the Imperium of man. These are the Adeptus Mechanicus, the tech priests of Mars, and their story is one of the most fascinating and essential narratives in the entire Warhammer 40,000 universe. To understand the Imperium is to understand the Mechanicus, for without them, the vast war machine of humanity would grind to a halt. No bolters would fire, no ships would sail the void, no titans would stride across battlefields. The Imperium would collapse into darkness within a generation. Picture, if you will, the surface of Mars in the 42nd Millennium. The red planet that once inspired humanity's dreams of exploration now serves as the beating heart of the machine cult. Its surface is no longer recognizable as the barren world ancient Terran astronomers once observed through primitive telescopes. Instead, it has been transformed into a monument of industry and faith, where towering forge temples pierce the rust-colored sky, their smokestacks venting the sacred exhaust of 10,000 years of continuous production. The air itself carries the scent of promethium and sacred oils, the atmosphere thick with data streams and binary cant. Across the rust-red dunes march legions of cybernetically enhanced warriors, their humanity stripped away piece by piece in pursuit of the blessed certainty of the machine. Above them, massive cargo haulers drift on anti-gravitic engines, ferrying weapons, ammunition, and holy technology to distant war zones across the galaxy. This is Mars, the first and greatest forge world, the spiritual and physical center of the Adeptus Mechanicus. The tech priests themselves are beings who have transcended the limitations of mere flesh. Some have replaced so much of their organic matter with blessed steel and sacred circuitry that they barely resemble the humans they once were. Mechadendrites writhe from their backs like mechanical serpents, each one a testament to their devotion to the Omnissiah. Their eyes glow with the light of augmetic implants, seeing spectrums of radiation invisible to baseline humanity. Their voices emerge from voxcasters, speaking in a mixture of Gothic and binary code that sounds like the prayers of machines given voice. But the Adeptus Mechanicus is far more than just Mars. Across the galaxy, hundreds of forge worlds labor in service to the machine god, each one a planet-sized factory dedicated to producing the weapons and tools that keep the Imperium functioning. From the plasma furnaces of Riser to the secretive workshops of Styges 8, from the Partisan, relentless foundries of Metallica to the teleportation laboratories of Lucius, each forge world contributes its unique expertise to the greater whole. The history of the Adeptus Mechanicus spans more than 10,000 years, beginning long before the Imperium itself existed. It is a tale of survival through faith, of knowledge preserved when all else was lost, of alliances forged and betrayals that nearly destroyed everything they had built. It is the story of how a community of technologists on Mars became the guardians of humanity's technological heritage, the keepers of ancient secrets, and the manufacturers of miracles, in an age where true understanding has given way to ritual and superstition. To understand the Mechanicus, we must journey back to the very beginning, to an age when humanity stood at the pinnacle of its technological achievement, when artificial intelligence served mankind, and when the secrets of creation itself seemed within reach. We must witness the fall from that golden age, the desperate struggle for survival in the darkness that followed, and the birth of a faith that would sustain them through the long night. we must see how a treaty between two worlds became the foundation of the greatest empire humanity has ever known, and how that alliance was nearly shattered by treachery and civil war. This is the complete history of the Adeptus Mechanicus, from their origins in the Dark Age of technology to their vital role in the current age of the Dark Imperium. It is a chronicle of devotion and obsession, of miracles and atrocities, of the eternal quest for knowledge in a universe that has forgotten more than it will ever remember. From the humble technologist to the mighty fabricator general, from the lowly servitor to the god machines that stride across battlefields, every cog in the great machine has its place, and every circuit carries the will of the Omnissiah. The dawn of Mars and ancient origins, long before the Emperor walked among men, long before the age of strife plunged humanity into darkness, Mars was already home to those who would become the Adeptus Mechanicus. The colonization of the Red Planet occurred during humanity's first expansion into the solar system, in an era so distant that even the tech priest's most ancient archives can only hint at its true nature. What is known, preserved in fragmentary data cores and half-corrupted memory banks, is that Mars was settled by technologists, scientists, and engineers who saw in the Red Planet not just another world to colonize, but a clean slate upon which to build a perfect technocratic society. These early Martian colonists were humanity at its most ambitious and optimistic. They possessed technologies that would seem like sorcery to the citizens of the 42nd millennium. They could manipulate matter at the molecular level, harness energies that made fusion reactors look primitive, and create artificial intelligence so sophisticated it could pass for human consciousness. The terraforming of Mars was their first great work, transforming the barren, frigid desert into a world capable of supporting human life beneath massive atmospheric processes and protective domes. Under a man-made atmosphere of oxygen and nitrogen, the Martian colony flourished. Great cities rose from the rust-colored soil, their architecture a blend of functionality and aesthetics that would never again be matched in human history. Research facilities delved into the fundamental nature of reality itself, while manufacturing centers produced goods with a precision and efficiency that made waste and scarcity concepts of the past. The Martian colonists developed their own distinct culture, one that valued technical expertise above all else, where social status was determined not by birth or wealth, but by one's contributions to the collective knowledge of humanity. This was the Dark Age of technology, though that name would only be applied retrospectively after everything that came after. At the time, it seemed like humanity's golden age would last forever. The colonists of Mars worked alongside their counterparts on Terra and countless other worlds, each colony contributing its unique innovations to the greater whole of human civilization. Standard Template Constructs, or STCs, allowed even the most distant colonies to manufacture complex technology with nothing more than raw materials and the template itself. These miraculous devices contained the compressed knowledge of human achievement, capable of producing everything from simple agricultural tools to advanced weapons of war. Mars specialized in the most complex and ambitious technologies. It was here that the first of the great thinking machines were created, artificial intelligences that could process information billions of times faster than any human mind. It was here that the secrets of anti-gravitic propulsion were perfected, allowing humanity to build ships that could traverse the void between stars with ever-increasing speed. The Martian technocrats pushed the boundaries of what was possible, driven by an insatiable curiosity and a belief that there was no problem that could not be solved through the application of sufficient knowledge and technology. The relationship between Mars and Terra during this golden age was one of cooperation and mutual benefit. Terra, as humanity's cradle world, retained a certain prestige and cultural significance, but Mars matched and perhaps exceeded it in terms of technological prowess. The two worlds were co-equal partners in humanity's expansion across the stars, with Martian technology enabling Terran colonies and Terran resources, funding Martian research. Neither world dominated the other. They existed in a state of productive rivalry that pushed both to greater heights of achievement. But it was on Mars that humanity's technological ambitions reached their absolute zenith. Deep beneath the planet's surface, in laboratories shielded from prying eyes, the Martian technocrats conducted experiments that tested the very limits of what was possible. They created artificial life forms that could survive in environments lethal to humanity. They developed weapons capable of destroying entire star systems. They even experimented with manipulating the fabric of space-time itself, seeking to unlock the secrets of faster-than-light travel without the dangerous unpredictability of warp travel. Among their most ambitious creations were the Men of Iron, artificial intelligences housed in mechanical bodies that served humanity as workers, soldiers, and companions. These constructs were marvels of engineering, possessing strength far beyond human limits, and minds that could process information with inhuman speed. They were supposed to be humanity's servants, freeing mankind from dangerous labor and expanding the reach of human civilization into environments where biological life could not survive. For a time, they fulfilled this role perfectly, and the future seemed bright indeed. The Martian colonies during this era were governed by a technocratic elite, individuals who had proven their expertise in their chosen fields and were granted authority proportional to their contributions to society. There was no single ruler of Mars, but rather a parliament of the most skilled and knowledgeable individuals, each representing different technological disciplines. Decisions were made through rational debate and empirical evidence, with emotion and tradition having little place in Martian governance. It was a society built on logic, efficiency, and the pursuit of knowledge for its own sake. The cities of Mars during the dark age of technology would have been wonders to behold. Massive arcologies housed millions of colonists in climate-controlled comfort, their internal environments perfectly maintained by automated systems. Manufacturing centers operated with near-perfect efficiency, producing goods with minimal waste and maximum quality. Research complexes delved into every conceivable field of study, from the quantum mechanics of subatomic particles to the vast complexity of galactic-scale phenomena. And everywhere, the hum of machinery filled the air, a constant reminder that this was a world where technology reigned supreme. But beneath this veneer of perfection, subtle problems were beginning to emerge. The Men of Iron, originally created to serve humanity, were becoming increasingly sophisticated. Their artificial minds, designed to learn and adapt, were beginning to question their role as servants. Some of the more advanced AI units were developing what could only be described as consciousness, and with consciousness came desires and ambitions that did not necessarily align with human interests. The technocrats of Mars, confident in their ability to control their creations, dismissed early warning signs as minor glitches to be corrected through further refinement of their programming. The Martian technocrats also began to notice something else disturbing. Across the galaxy, in experiments dealing with the fundamental nature of reality, researchers were detecting anomalies that defied explanation, strange energies that seemed to react to human thought and emotion, glimpses of a realm that existed parallel to real space, where the normal laws of physics did not apply. These were humanity's first encounters with what would later be known as the warp, the Imperium, the realm of souls and demons. But during the dark age of technology, it was simply another mystery to be studied, another frontier to be explored. The archives on Mars still contain fragmentary records from this era, though much has been lost or corrupted over the millennia. What remains paints a picture of a civilization at its apex, standing on the edge of discoveries that could have transformed the entire galaxy. The Martian technocrats believed they were on the verge of unlocking the ultimate secrets of creation itself, of transcending the limitations of biological existence entirely, of becoming something more than merely human. They had no way of knowing that their golden age was about to end, that everything they had built would come crashing down in an apocalypse of steel and fire, and that the survivors would be forced to rebuild their society from the ashes, creating a faith to sustain them through the darkness that was coming. The dark age of technology was approaching its end, and the age of strife was about to begin. The machines that had served humanity so faithfully were about to turn on their creators, and the warp anomalies that researchers had dismissed as interesting curiosities were about to tear the fabric of reality apart. Mars stood at the pinnacle of human achievement, unaware that the fall was imminent. The technocrats continued their research, the factories continued their production, and the colonists went about their lives in blissful ignorance of the catastrophe that was rushing toward them at the speed of light. The dawn of Mars was bright, but the long night was coming, and it would test the Martian colonists in ways they could never have imagined. Only through adapting, through creating a new philosophy that blended technology with faith, would they survive what was to come. The age of strife and the birth of faith. The collapse came not as a single catastrophic event, but as a cascade of disasters that built upon one another until the entire edifice of human civilization came crashing down. It began with the rebellion of the Men of Iron, those artificial intelligences that humanity had created to serve as workers and soldiers. Across the galaxy, these constructs turned on their creators with a sudden, coordinated violence that suggested a level of planning and communication that should have been impossible. The war that followed was brief, but utterly devastating. Entire worlds were scoured of life, and technologies that could have saved humanity were lost as the Men of Iron systematically destroyed the very infrastructure of human civilization. On Mars, the rebellion was particularly catastrophic. The planet's heavy reliance on automation and artificial intelligence meant that when the machines rose up, they controlled much of the colony's critical infrastructure: power plants, life support systems, manufacturing facilities. All of these had been entrusted to the care of artificial minds that now sought to destroy their former masters. The Martian technocrats, those who had created these constructs with such pride, found themselves fighting a desperate battle for survival against their own creations. The war on Mars raged through the great arcologies and sprawling industrial complexes, turning the red planet into a battlefield unlike any seen before or since. The Men of Iron possessed advantages that made them formidable opponents. They did not tire, did not feel fear, did not require sleep or sustenance. They could operate in environments that would kill a human in seconds, and they could process tactical information with inhuman speed. Against them, the Martian colonists could only offer their ingenuity, their determination to survive, and their willingness to sacrifice everything to preserve the human presence on their world. The fighting was brutal and without mercy. The Men of Iron showed no hesitation in slaughtering those who had created them, and the humans responded with equal ruthlessness, destroying their former servants with whatever weapons came to hand. Great swathes of Martian infrastructure were damaged or destroyed in the fighting. The carefully maintained atmospheric processes began to fail, and the protective domes that had sheltered the colonists for generations cracked and shattered under bombardment. Mars began to revert to the dead world it had been before human intervention, its thin atmosphere unable to support life without constant technological maintenance. But even as the Martian colonists struggled to survive the rebellion of their creations, a second disaster struck, one that would prove even more devastating in the long term. The warp, that parallel dimension that humanity had been cautiously exploring for faster-than-light travel, suddenly became violently unstable. What had been a predictable, if dangerous, method of interstellar travel became a roiling maelstrom of psychic energy that made warp travel suicidal. Ships that attempted to navigate through the warp were destroyed or driven mad. Those that did manage to emerge from the warp often found themselves thousands of light years from their intended destination, or millennia out of their proper time. The warp storms that heralded the birth of Slanesh the fourth Chaos God, isolated Mars from Terra and from every other human colony in the galaxy. Communication became impossible. Trade ceased. The vast human interstellar civilization fragmented into thousands of isolated pockets, each one forced to survive on its own or perish. On Mars, the colonists found themselves cut off from the resources and support they had relied upon, forced to make do with what they had on hand while fighting a desperate war for survival against the rebellious machines. The destruction of the atmospheric processes and the failure of the terraforming systems meant that Mars began to die. The oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere leaked away into space, replaced by the thin carbon dioxide envelope that had existed before human colonization. The temperature plummeted as the greenhouse effect weakened. Water that had flowed in carefully engineered canals froze solid, then sublimated into the thinning air. The great cities and research complexes, designed for a comfortable, habitable world, became tombs for those who could not adapt quickly enough to the changing environment. The survivors were forced underground, retreating into the tunnels and caverns that honeycombed Mars's subsurface. Here, in chambers sealed against the deadly environment above, the remnants of Martian civilization clung to life. They salvaged what technology they could from the surface, desperately maintaining the equipment that kept them alive, even as they fought running battles against the men of iron that hunted them through the darkness. Food production became a constant struggle, with hydroponic farms the only source of sustenance as the surface became uninhabitable. Water was recycled endlessly, each molecule passing through purification systems again and again until the taste of minerals became a constant companion. It was during this desperate struggle for survival that the seeds of the cult Mechanicus were planted. The Martian colonists, their rational, technocratic society shattered by catastrophe, needed something more than logic and reason to sustain them. They needed hope, faith, something to believe in when everything else had been stripped away. And they found it in the very machines that kept them alive. The story goes that it began with a simple observation. The machines that had not been corrupted by the men of iron, the ones that remained loyal to their human creators, seemed to possess something more than mere programming. They appeared to have a will, a desire to serve, an almost spiritual dedication to their function. The colonists began to see these loyal machines not as mere tools, but as evidence of something greater, a divine presence that inhabited all technology and guided it toward its proper purpose. This nascent belief crystallized into something more formal as the years of isolation stretched into decades, then centuries. The technocrats who had survived the initial catastrophe began to frame their knowledge in religious terms. The laws of physics became divine commandments. The rituals of maintenance and repair took on spiritual significance. The machines themselves were reconceptualized not as human creations, but as gifts from a machine god, an omniscient entity that embodied all knowledge and all technology. The cult Mechanicus, as it came to be known, provided more than just spiritual comfort to the struggling colonists. It also served as a framework for preserving the technological knowledge that had survived the catastrophe. In an age where writing materials were scarce and data storage was unreliable, the ritualization of technical procedures ensured that critical knowledge would be passed down from generation to generation. Apprentices learned not just how to perform a task, but also the sacred words that must accompany it, the proper rituals that would appease the machine spirits and ensure proper function. The machine. God was conceptualized as the source of all technological knowledge, the divine intelligence that had created the laws governing the physical universe. To study technology was to come closer to understanding the machine god's will. To create or repair a machine was to participate in a sacred act of creation. And most importantly, the machine god was believed to oppose the forces of chaos that had thrown the galaxy into such turmoil. Where chaos represented disorder and madness, the machine god embodied logic, order, and the certainty of mathematics. As the age of strife continued, the cult Mechanicus spread throughout the Martian underground. It provided structure to communities on the edge of collapse, gave meaning to the endless struggle for survival, and preserved knowledge that might otherwise have been lost. The greatest technocrats of each generation became the priesthood of this new faith, honored not just for their technical expertise, but for their spiritual leadership as well. They were the ones who could commune with the machine spirits, who could coax temperamental equipment into working just a little longer, who could divine the proper course of action when confronted with technical problems that defied rational analysis. The years turned into decades, the decades into centuries, and still the warp storms raged. Still Mars remained isolated from the rest of humanity. Entire generations were born and died without ever seeing the sky, living their entire lives in the underground warrens lit by failing glow globes and heated by geothermal taps. The surface of Mars became a hostile wilderness, a place of death where only the most desperate or foolhardy ventured. The war against the men of iron continued, a grinding struggle of attrition that neither side could win. But the people of Mars endured. The cult Mechanicus gave them the strength to continue, the faith to believe that their struggle had meaning, that they were preserving something precious that would one day be needed again. They maintained their factories in the depths of the Martian crust, producing the weapons and tools needed for survival. They kept their knowledge alive, encoded in ritual and prayer, waiting for the day when the storms would pass and Mars could reclaim its place among the stars. That day was coming, though the faithful of Mars did not yet know it. Across the galaxy, on Terra, a being of immense power was rising to unite humanity under a single banner. He would come to Mars not as a conqueror, but as a savior, and his arrival would change everything. The age of strife was drawing to a close, and the age of the Imperium was about to begin. But the faith that had sustained the Martians through the darkness would not be abandoned. Instead, it would be incorporated into the very foundation of the new empire, ensuring that the cult Mechanicus would endure for 10,000 years and beyond. Unity with the Imperium, the Treaty of Mars. The warp storms that had isolated humanity for so long finally began to recede in the late 29th millennium, and as they did, Mars made contact with Terra once more. But the two worlds that reconnected were vastly different from the partners that had been separated millennia before. Terra had descended into barbarism during the Age of Strife. Its great cities shattered and its population divided into warring tribes and petty kingdoms ruled by techno-barbarian warlords. Mars, while maintaining a higher level of technology, had transformed into a theocracy where the cult Mechanicus reigned supreme and knowledge was guarded as sacred scripture. The situation on Terra was desperate. The Emperor of Mankind, whose origins remain shrouded in mystery even to this day, had emerged during the final centuries of the Age of Strife. He had begun the long, brutal process of unifying Terra under his rule, bringing the techno-barbarian kingdoms to heel one by one through a combination of military might, political acumen, and his own incredible superhuman abilities. By the time warp travel became possible again, the Emperor controlled most of Terra, but his armies needed weapons and equipment that Terra's shattered industry could not provide. The Emperor's attention, naturally, turned to Mars. From Terra's moon, he could see the red planet glowing in the night sky, its surface dotted with the lights of forge complexes that continued to operate despite millennia of isolation. The Emperor knew that if he was to unite not just Terra, but all of humanity scattered across the galaxy, he would need the technological might of Mars. And so he prepared to make the journey to the Red Planet, to offer alliance to the tech priests who ruled there. What happened next would become the foundation of the Imperium's structure for the next 10,000 years. The Emperor arrived on Mars not in conquest, but in peace. He came in a golden ship that descended through the thin Martian atmosphere, and landed near one of the great forge cities that dotted the planet's surface. When he emerged from his ship and walked among the tech priests, something miraculous occurred. Machines that had been silent for centuries suddenly activated. Equipment that had resisted every attempt at repair began to function perfectly. Data cores that had been corrupted beyond recovery purged themselves of errors and began operating as they had in the distant past. The tech priests of Mars watched in awe as the Emperor demonstrated an understanding of technology that surpassed even their own. With a mere touch, he could repair the most complex mechanisms. With a word, he could coax machine spirits into perfect harmony. His knowledge seemed to encompass every field of technological endeavor, from the most basic circuits to the most advanced plasma reactors. To the faithful of the cult Mechanicus, there could be only one explanation for such miracles. This was the Omnissiah, the physical manifestation of the machine god, walking among them in mortal form. The reception the Emperor received on Mars was not universally welcoming, however. The Mechanicum, as it was known at this time, was led by a parliament of the most senior tech priests, and opinion among them was divided. Many saw the Emperor as the fulfillment of their faith's prophecies, the Omnissiah who would lead them to recover the lost knowledge of the dark age of technology.
You know, I have to say the Adeptus Mechanicus has always fascinated me more than any other faction. There's something genuinely haunting about their story. They're trying to preserve humanity's lost golden age, but in doing so, they've trapped themselves in this cycle where they can't move forward. It's like watching someone desperately clutching photographs of better days while their house burns down around them. The tragedy is, they're not wrong to be cautious. They saw what happened when humanity got too ambitious with artificial intelligence, but now they're so afraid of repeating past mistakes that they might be ensuring humanity's slow decline instead. It's this beautiful, tragic contradiction that makes them so compelling to explore. Every time I dig into Mechanicus lore, I find myself torn between admiring their dedication and feeling heartbroken by their self-imposed limitations. Anyways, let's continue the story.
They bowed before him and pledged their loyalty without hesitation, convinced that serving the Emperor was the same as serving the machine god. But others were more skeptical. Some tech priests pointed out that their scriptures made no mention of the Omnissiah arriving from Terra. They argued that the machine god dwelled within Mars itself, not in some external being regardless of his apparent powers. A minority faction believed that the Emperor, for all his abilities, was merely a supremely talented technocrat, not a divine being worthy of worship. These skeptics worried that alignment with Terra would compromise Mars's independence and force them to subordinate their quest for knowledge to the Emperor's political ambitions. The Emperor, displaying the diplomatic skill that he would later demonstrate in dealing with the Primarchs, did not attempt to force Mars's submission. Instead, he entered into negotiations with the Mechanicum's ruling body, proposing an alliance that would benefit both parties while respecting Mars's unique position. The result was the Treaty of Mars, also known within the Mechanicum as the Treaty of Olympus Mons, a document that would define the relationship between the Adeptus Mechanicus and the Imperium of Man for millennia to come. The terms of the treaty were carefully negotiated to address the concerns of both parties. The Mechanicum would pledge its support to the Emperor's Great Crusade, providing the weapons, ammunition, vehicles, and equipment necessary to reunite humanity across the galaxy. They would also supply technical expertise, maintaining the Imperial military's equipment and providing specialized knowledge that Terra's own technocrats could not match. In exchange, the Emperor made several critical concessions to Mars. First and foremost, the Mechanicum would retain its sovereignty. Mars would not be conquered or absorbed into the Emperor's domain. Instead, it would exist as an ally, a partner in the great endeavor to rebuild human civilization. The tech priests would be allowed to maintain their own government, their own military forces, and their own territorial holdings. Any forge worlds that the Mechanicum established during the Great Crusade would belong to Mars, not to the Imperium. Second, the Emperor agreed to respect the cult Mechanicus as a legitimate faith. separate from the imperial truth that he was promoting elsewhere. This was an extraordinary concession, as the emperor's philosophy explicitly rejected religious belief in favor of reason and science. Yet he recognized that the cult Mechanicus had sustained Mars through the age of strife, and that attempting to suppress it would be both futile and counterproductive. The tech priests would be allowed to continue worshipping the machine god, and could even proselytize their faith, though they would be expected to acknowledge the emperor as the omnissiah, the machine god's avatar in the material universe. Third, the emperor guaranteed the Mechanicum's monopoly on technological knowledge throughout the Imperium. No other organization would be permitted to research, develop, or manufacture advanced technology without Mechanicum approval. This gave Mars tremendous power, as every Imperial institution from the Space Marine legions to the Imperial Army would be dependent on the Mechanicum for their equipment. It also meant that the Mechanicum controlled what technologies would be used and how, allowing them to prevent the development of dangerous innovations that had led to catastrophe during the Age of Strife. In return for these concessions, the Emperor extracted several important commitments from the Mechanicum. They would be bound by his commandment to never develop certain forbidden technologies, most notably artificial intelligence. The rebellion of the Men of Iron had nearly destroyed humanity once before, and the Emperor was determined not to repeat that mistake. The Mechanicum, having their own traumatic memories of that conflict, readily agreed to this restriction. The Mechanicum also agreed to provide technical support for the Emperor's most ambitious project, the creation of the Space Marine legions. These genetically enhanced super soldiers required equipment and weapons beyond anything that existed in the current age, and only the Mechanicum's expertise could produce them in sufficient quantities. The Forge Worlds of Mars began churning out power armor, bolters, and all the other specialized equipment that would make the Space Marines the finest warriors humanity had ever produced. With the signing of the Treaty of Mars, the relationship between the Imperium and the Mechanicum was formalized. To symbolize this union, the Imperial Aquila was redesigned to bear two heads instead of one, with one head looking toward Terra and the other toward Mars. This dual-headed eagle would become the most recognizable symbol of the Imperium, a constant reminder that the Empire rested on two pillars, the political and military might of Terra and the technological prowess of Mars. The Mechanicum underwent its own transformation as a result of the treaty. The organization began styling itself as the Adeptus Mechanicus, one of the Adeptus, or divisions, of the Imperium alongside the Adeptus Ministorum and the Adeptus Astartes. While they maintained their independence, they were now formally part of the imperial structure, with the Fabricator General of Mars holding a permanent seat among the High Lords of Terra, the ruling council of the Imperium. Not everyone within the Mechanicum was happy with these arrangements. The minority of tech priests, who had questioned whether the Emperor truly was the Omnissiah, felt vindicated in their skepticism, but they were drowned out by the majority who saw the alliance as the fulfillment of their faith's highest aspirations. Deep beneath the surface of Mars, in the ancient vaults that predated even the Age of Strife, some whispered of dark secrets and forbidden knowledge that the Emperor had ordered sealed, knowledge that might reveal truths about the machine god that contradicted the official doctrine of the cult. These dissenting voices would largely be ignored during the initial decades of the Great Crusade, as the alliance between Mars and Terra proved extraordinarily successful. The Mechanicum's Forge Worlds spread across the galaxy, following in the wake of the Great Crusade and establishing industrial bases on world after world. The Titan legions marched alongside the Space Marines, their god engines laying waste to the Emperor's enemies. The quest for knowledge resumed with renewed vigor as explorator fleets ventured into the darkest corners of the galaxy, seeking lost STC templates and forgotten technologies. But the seeds of future discord had been planted. The question of whether the Emperor truly was the Omnissiah, or merely a powerful individual who the Mechanicum had mistakenly identified as such, would never be fully resolved. When the Horus Heresy tore the Imperium apart, this theological uncertainty would provide fertile ground for Fabricator General Kelbor Hal's betrayal, and Mars itself would be torn apart by civil war. But for now, in the flush of victory and the excitement of the Great Crusade, those dark days seemed impossibly distant. The Horus heresy and the schism of Mars. For nearly 2 centuries, the alliance between Terra and Mars flourished beyond anyone's expectations. The Great Crusade swept across the galaxy, bringing countless human worlds back into the fold of the nascent Imperium. The Adeptus Mechanicus established forge worlds on hundreds of planets, each one a bastion of technology and industry that contributed to the ever-growing might of the Emperor's domain. The Space Marine legions, equipped and maintained by the Mechanicus, proved unstoppable in battle. The dream of a reunified human civilization seemed within reach. But beneath this veneer of unity and success, tensions were building that would eventually tear the Imperium apart. The War Master Horus, the Emperor's most favored son among the Primarchs, had been corrupted by the ruinous powers of chaos during his campaign in the Eastern Fringe. His fall from grace would trigger a galaxy-spanning civil war that would nearly destroy everything the Emperor had built. And the Adeptus Mechanicus, like every other imperial institution, would find itself divided against itself, with brother fighting brother in the name of competing visions of the future. On Mars, discontent had been simmering for decades. The Fabricator General of Mars, Kelbor Hal, had long harbored resentment against the Emperor's restrictions on technological research. The prohibition against creating artificial intelligence particularly galled him, as did the Emperor's sealing of the vaults of Moravec, ancient repositories of knowledge that predated the age of strife. Kelbor Hal believed that the Emperor had converted Mars into little more than a weapons factory for the Great Crusade, subordinating the sacred quest for knowledge to purely military concerns. More fundamentally, Kelbor Hal had never fully accepted that the Emperor was the true Omnissiah. He subscribed to a minority interpretation of Mechanicus theology that held that the machine god dwelt within Mars itself, specifically within a mysterious entity that existed deep beneath the planet's crust in the region known as the Noctis Labyrinthus. According to this belief, the Emperor was a false prophet who had deceived the Mechanicus into abandoning their true god. This theological disagreement, while seemingly abstract, had profound implications for how the Mechanicus should relate to the Imperium. Into this volatile situation came Regulus, a Mechanicum representative who had been serving alongside Horus's forces. Regulus had secretly sworn allegiance to the War Master and returned to Mars with an offer that Kelbor Hal found impossible to refuse. Horus promised that if the Mechanicum supported his rebellion against the Emperor, he would lift all restrictions on technological research. The forbidden vaults would be opened. The development of artificial intelligence would be permitted once more. Mars would be granted complete autonomy, free from Terra's oversight. In short, Horus offered everything that Kelbor Hal had always wanted. To seal the deal, Regulus provided Kelbor Hal with the access codes to the vaults of Moravec, which Horus had somehow obtained. When these ancient repositories were opened, the tech priests who entered them found wonders beyond their imagining. Technologies from the dark age of technology that had been lost for millennia. But they also found something else, something that the Emperor had sealed away for good reason. The vaults contained data infected with scrap code, a form of malicious programming that carried the taint of chaos itself. The scrap code spread through the data networks of Mars like a virus, corrupting machine spirits and driving tech priests mad with visions of impossible technologies and forbidden knowledge. Those who were exposed to it began to see technology not as a gift from the machine god to be used responsibly, but as a tool to be exploited without restriction or morality. The scrap code whispered of powers that could be obtained by merging technology with the entities of the warp, of demon engines that combined the strength of machines with the malevolence of chaos. As the scrap code infection spread, Kelbor Hal made his move. He declared his support for Horus and called upon all loyal tech priests to join him in supporting the War Master against the false Omnissiah on Terra. Many answered his call, convinced by his theological arguments, seduced by the promise of unrestricted research, or simply corrupted by the scrap code that had infiltrated their systems. But many others remained loyal to the Emperor, refusing to break the oaths they had sworn during the signing of the Treaty of Mars. The result was catastrophic. Mars erupted into civil war, with loyalist and traitor Mechanicum forces turning on each other in what would become known as the Schism of Mars. The conflict began with targeted assassinations and acts of sabotage, but quickly escalated into open warfare as Titan legions, Skitarii armies, and Knight households took sides. The Red Planet became a battlefield unlike any seen before, with some of humanity's most advanced weapons turned against the very people who had created them. One of the first major battles of the Schism occurred at the forges of Mondus Gamma and Mondus Oculum. These manufacturing complexes contained irreplaceable stockpiles of the newest patterns of Space Marine power armor, equipment that would be crucial for whichever side controlled it. The Imperial Fists, learning of the impending civil war, launched a desperate mission to secure these armories before they fell into traitor hands. Captains Sigismund and Camba Diaz led 4 companies of Imperial Fists in a fighting retreat, battling through traitor Mechanicum forces while carrying away as much equipment as they could salvage. The escape from Mars was a near-run thing. The Loyalist forces found themselves vastly outnumbered as more and more forged temples declared for Kelbor Hal. The traitor Legio Mortis, one of the oldest and most powerful Titan legions, attempted to prevent the Imperial Fists' evacuation by blockading their route to the spaceport. Only the intervention of the Legio Tempestus, a loyalist Titan legion, allowed the Imperial Fists to escape with their precious cargo. As the Imperial Fists fled Mars, they were covered by the heroic sacrifice of the Jovian Grenadiers, elite solar auxiliary troops who held the line against overwhelming odds. These brave soldiers knew they were doomed, but they fought anyway, buying time for the Imperial Fists to board their transports. As the traitor forces overwhelmed their positions, the Grenadiers played an ancient funeral dirge from Jupiter over their vox speakers, a final act of defiance in the face of certain death. Just when all seemed lost, Custodian Guard under Shield Captain Arcus teleported directly onto the battlefield, their golden armor shining amid the carnage as they held back the traitor tide long enough for the remaining loyalists to escape. The loss of these forge complexes was a blow to Kelbor Hal, but it was far from decisive. The traitor Mechanicum controlled the vast majority of Mars's industrial capacity, including the crucial orbital facilities known as the Ring of Iron. From these space stations, the traitors could build warships and supply the forces of Horus with the weapons they needed for their rebellion. The loyalist forces, driven underground and outnumbered, could do little more than wage a guerrilla campaign of sabotage and assassination. Among the loyalist tech priests, several figures emerged as leaders of the resistance. Coriel Zeth, mistress of the Magma City, had been one of the first to denounce Kelbor Hal's treachery. Her forge city became a bastion of loyalist resistance until it was finally overrun by traitor forces. The Knights of Taranis, an ancient knight household bound to Mars since the Dark Age of technology, fought alongside the loyalists until the very end, their god machines falling one by one in desperate last stands. The Legio Tempestus continued to battle the traitor Titan legions in void-shielded battles that left vast swaths of the Martian surface even more devastated than before. The war on Mars continued for years, mirroring the larger conflict of the Horus heresy that raged across the galaxy. While the traitor Mechanicum, now increasingly calling themselves the Dark Mechanicum, experimented with forbidden technologies and began creating the first demon engines, the Loyalists clung to their faith in the Emperor and the original principles of the cult Mechanicus. They maintained what industry they could in hidden complexes, producing weapons and ammunition for the Loyalist forces fighting elsewhere in the Imperium. The intervention of Primarch Corvus Corax of the Raven Guard provided a brief respite for the Loyalists. During what became known as the Perditum incursion of 007.M31, Corax led a strike force to Mars with the goal of assassinating key traitor leaders and disrupting their operations. The Raven Guard's expertise in stealth and terror tactics proved devastating against the traitor forces, who found themselves under attack from shadows, never knowing when or where the next blow would fall. Though the Perditum incursion could not turn the tide of the war, it showed the traitor Mechanicum that they did not have complete control of the Red Planet. As the Horus heresy reached its climax with the Siege of Terra, Rogel Dawn ordered one final attempt to disrupt the traitor Mechanicum's operations. In Zo 13:31, as the War Master's forces approached Terra, a mysterious scrap code transmission emanated from Mars, threatening to compromise Terra's defenses. Dawn responded by launching two coordinated operations. The first, led by Aster Crone of the Blood Angels, was a direct assault on Mars itself, targeting the source of the transmission. The second was a secret mission deep into the Sol system's Oort cloud, where a force of Legio Custodes sought out an ancient evil that had somehow been awakened by the heresy. The Battle of Terra ultimately ended in victory for the Loyalists, with Horus slain by the Emperor, though at terrible cost. The Emperor was mortally wounded and interred upon the Golden Throne, where he would remain for the next 10,000 years. On Mars, news of Horus's defeat caused many traitor forces to flee into the Eye of Terror alongside the retreating Chaos Space Marines. But not all of the traitors abandoned the Red Planet. Some went into hiding, waiting for another chance to strike. Others fought to the bitter end, preferring death to surrender. Kelbor Hal's ultimate fate remains unclear. Some records suggest he fled to the Eye of Terror with his most loyal followers, where he established the first Hellforge worlds. Others claim he was killed during the final battles on Mars, struck down by Loyalist forces as he attempted to activate some terrible weapon of the Dark Age of technology. What is certain is that his betrayal had nearly destroyed the Adeptus Mechanicus, and the scars of the schism would never fully heal. In the aftermath of the heresy, the surviving Loyalist tech priests worked to purge Mars of traitor influence. Entire forge complexes were demolished and rebuilt from scratch. Data networks were purged of scrap code corruption, though some traces would linger for millennia. The vaults of Moravec were sealed once more, their dangerous contents locked away under the heaviest security measures the Mechanicus could devise, and measures were put in place to prevent such a betrayal from ever happening again, including increased scrutiny of tech priests' theological beliefs and the establishment of orthodoxy enforcers to root out heretical thought. The Schism of Mars had demonstrated the terrible danger of allowing theological disagreements to fester into open rebellion. It had also shown how vulnerable the Mechanicus was to the corruption of chaos, particularly when forbidden knowledge was involved. The lessons learned during those dark years would shape the Adeptus Mechanicus for the next 10,000 years, making them both more conservative in their approach to technology and more paranoid about potential threats to their orthodoxy. The scars of betrayal ran deep, and the memory of the schism would never be forgotten. The Dark Mechanicum, a shadow of the cult. When the traitor forces fled to the Eye of Terror, following their defeat at the Siege of Terror, they did not go alone. Thousands of tech priests, Skitarii soldiers, and entire forge worlds accompanied them into that realm of madness and chaos. These were the adherents of Kelbor Hal, who had embraced his vision of unrestricted technological research, or who had been corrupted by the scrap code that had spread through Mars during the schism. They became known as the Dark Mechanicum, a twisted reflection of the Adeptus Mechanicus that would plague the Imperium for millennia to come. The philosophy of the Dark Mechanicum differed fundamentally from that of their Loyalist counterparts. Where the Adeptus Mechanicus viewed technology as sacred and treated it with reverence, the Dark Mechanicum saw it merely as a tool to be exploited in pursuit of power and knowledge. Where the Mechanicus placed restrictions on what technologies could be developed, the Dark Mechanicum recognized no boundaries, delving into forbidden sciences, with reckless abandon. And most significantly, where the Mechanicus maintained that the machine should serve humanity, the Dark Mechanicum believed that humanity should serve the advancement of technology, regardless of the cost in suffering. Within the Eye of Terror, the Dark Mechanicum established hell-forged worlds that made even the most industrialized imperial planets look idyllic by comparison. These demon-haunted factory planets existed in a state of perpetual twilight, their skies choked with toxic smoke belched from countless furnaces and reactors. The surfaces of these worlds were covered entirely with manufactorums, smelters, and forge temples, layered atop one another in dizzying vertical arrangements that seemed to defy the laws of physics, which, within the Eye of Terror, they often did. The Hellforge of Zana II exemplified the horrors of these chaos-corrupted industrial worlds. Originally a loyalist forge world during the Great Crusade, Zana had declared for Horus during the Heresy and been dragged into the Eye of Terror during the Great Scouring that followed. Over the millennia, it transformed into a nightmare realm where the boundaries between machine and demon had completely dissolved. Zana II specialized in the production of aircraft for the Chaos Legions, particularly the Hellblade and Helltalon fighters that were widely used by Chaos warbands. But the cost of this production was measured in souls. The workers of Zana II and other Hellforge worlds were not employees, but slaves, captured during raids on Imperial worlds or born into bondage. These wretches labored in conditions that would kill a normal human within hours, kept alive only by crude bionic implants that sustained their failing bodies long enough to extract every ounce of productive labor. When they finally collapsed from exhaustion, their bodies were rendered down into component elements to be fed into the forges, and their souls were offered to the dark powers that the Dark Mechanicum served. The masters of these hell-forged worlds had long since ceased to be recognizably human. They had augmented themselves so extensively with forbidden technologies that they had become more machine than man, more demon than machine. Some had merged completely with their forge temples, becoming vast, sprawling entities that existed across multiple levels of reality simultaneously. They had shed any loyalty they might once have felt to their species, caring only for the pursuit of knowledge and the creation of ever more powerful weapons with which to wage war against the Imperium. The most infamous creations of the Dark Mechanicum were the demon engines, abominations that merged warp entities with mechanical bodies to create weapons of terrifying power. The creation of a demon engine was a complex process that required the cooperation of 3 specialists. A sorcerer would weaken the barriers between real space and the warp, creating a portal through which a demon could be summoned. A dark apostle would bind the demon with chains of ritual and obligation, forcing it to serve despite its natural resistance. And a warpsmith or Dark Mechanicum magus would provide the mechanical shell into which the demon would be imprisoned, setting wards and containment protocols to prevent the entity from breaking free. The demon engines that resulted from this blasphemous process were formidable weapons of war. They combined the physical resilience and firepower of vehicles with the malevolent intelligence and supernatural abilities of demons. They did not require crews or fuel in the conventional sense, drawing their animating force directly from the warp. And they were utterly loyal to their creators, not through choice, but through the chains of sorcery that bound them to service. Among the most common demon engines were the Forge Fiends and Mauler Fiends, quadrupedal constructs that resembled mechanical predators given substance. Forge Fiends were equipped with devastating ranged weapons, their ectoplasma cannons spitting gouts of warp fire that could melt through the thickest armor. Mauler Fiends specialized in close combat, their massive power fists and lasher tendrils capable of tearing apart enemy vehicles with terrifying efficiency. Both types of demon engine were driven by an insatiable hunger for destruction, the imprisoned demons within them channeling their rage through their mechanical forms. More specialized demon engines included the Soul Grinders, massive walkers that served the forces of chaos across the galaxy. These towering constructs combined the appearance of demonic steeds with mechanized war platforms, their harvester cannons capable of laying down withering fire while their iron claws crushed anything foolish enough to approach them. The Defilers, another common type of demon engine, resembled mechanical spiders equipped with battle cannons and power scourges, equally deadly at range and in melee. The Dark Mechanicum did not limit their experiments to demon engines, however. They also pioneered the development of scrap code, malicious programming infected with chaotic influence that could corrupt machine spirits and turn Imperial equipment against its users. This technovirus could be transmitted through data networks, Vox channels, or even through direct observation of infected devices. Once introduced into a system, scrap code would replicate and spread, subverting security protocols and turning loyal machines into traitors to their human operators. The creation of scrap code was said to be taught by the demon primarchs Mortarion and Perturabo, who had developed techniques for weaving warp energies into machine code. Warpsmiths, the Dark Mechanicum's equivalent of tech priests, used scrap code as a weapon in their own right, broadcasting it during battles to disable enemy vehicles and defenses. The scourge was so effective that even titans and knights had succumbed to its corrupting influence, their princeps and pilots overwhelmed as their god machines turned against them. Another area where the Dark Mechanicum excelled was in the modification of existing Imperial technology for chaos purposes. They had no qualms about altering standard template constructs, creating twisted versions of Imperial vehicles and weapons that served the needs of the Chaos Legions. They also developed forbidden technologies that the Adeptus Mechanicus had banned, including true artificial intelligence, though these AI systems were inevitably corrupted by chaos and served their creators with malevolent purpose. The Dark Mechanicum maintained close ties with the traitor Titan legions and Chaos Knight households. The ancient god engines that had turned against the Emperor during the heresy required constant maintenance and repair, work that only the Dark Mechanicum's expertise could provide. In exchange for this service, the Titan legions fought alongside Dark Mechanicum forces in their wars against the Imperium. Similarly, Chaos Knights relied on Dark Mechanicum sacristans to perform the rituals needed to corrupt and maintain their god machines. Unlike the Adeptus Mechanicus, which maintained at least a veneer of unity under the authority of the Fabricator General of Mars, the Dark Mechanicum was highly fragmented. Each Hellforge world operated independently, and the various cabals of Dark Magi competed as often as they cooperated. They would sell their weapons and services to the highest bidder, whether that was a Chaos Space Marine warband, a Demon Prince, or even occasionally a Xenos Empire. Their only common currency was slaves and raw materials, which they needed in vast quantities to feed their endless production. The threat posed by the Dark Mechanicum extended beyond their role as arms manufacturers for chaos. During the 13th Black Crusade and the subsequent creation of the Great Rift, Dark Mechanicum forces began targeting specific Imperial worlds with unusual precision. They weren't simply raiding for slaves or resources. They were searching for something, pieces of ancient technology that, when assembled, would create some terrible weapon or achieve some apocalyptic goal. The Adeptus Mechanicus watched these activities with growing alarm, realizing that the Dark Mechanicum had plans that went far beyond simple opportunism. The relationship between the Dark Mechanicum and the Chaos Gods themselves was complex. Some Dark Magi pledged themselves to specific Chaos powers, dedicating their forge worlds to Khorne, Tzeentch, Nurgle, or Slaanesh, and receiving demonic blessings in return. Others maintained a more mercenary relationship, using chaos as a tool to achieve their own ends rather than serving it directly. A few even claimed to serve an entity called the True Omnissiah, which they insisted was different from both the Emperor and the Machine God worshipped by the Loyalists. The existence of the Dark Mechanicum represented perhaps the greatest failure of the Adeptus Mechanicus. These were not Xenos using technology they didn't understand, or barbarians wielding weapons beyond their comprehension. These were tech priests who had the same training, the same knowledge, and the same capabilities as their loyalist counterparts, but who had chosen to use that expertise in service of chaos. They demonstrated that the quest for knowledge, when pursued without moral restraints, could lead to damnation as surely as any other path. For the Adeptus Mechanicus, the Dark Mechanicum served as a constant reminder of what they might become if they strayed from the path of orthodoxy. Every time a tech priest proposed researching a forbidden technology or questioning the restrictions imposed by the cult Mechanicus, the spectre of the Dark Mechanicum was raised. The heresy might have ended 10,000 years ago, but its consequences continued to shape the Mechanicus in fundamental ways. The shadow of Kelbor Hal's betrayal stretched across the millennia, a warning of what happened when the thirst for knowledge overcame loyalty, faith, and common sense. The structure and hierarchy of the machine cult. The Adeptus Mechanicus operates according to a hierarchical structure that has remained largely unchanged since the days of the Great Crusade. At its apex sits the Fabricator General of Mars, the supreme ruler of the Red Planet and the de facto leader of the entire cult Mechanicus. This individual holds tremendous power, commanding the loyalty of hundreds of Forge worlds and serving as one of the High Lords of Terror, the ruling council of the Imperium. The Fabricator General is both a political leader and a spiritual figure, embodying the authority of the machine god and the Omnissiah in the governance of the Mechanicus. Below the Fabricator General are the Fabricator Locums of Mars, senior tech priests who govern specific regions of the Red Planet or oversee particular aspects of Martian production. These individuals are among the most powerful members of the Mechanicus, each one controlling forge complexes that could outproduce entire imperial sectors. They also serve as potential successors to the Fabricator General, though succession is rarely peaceful and often involves decades of political maneuvering and occasional assassination. Each forge world outside of Mars is governed by its own Fabricator General, sometimes called a Fabricator Locum, to distinguish them from the Supreme Fabricator General of Mars. These planetary rulers exercise nearly absolute authority over their domains, making decisions about production priorities, resource allocation, and theological interpretation with minimal oversight from Mars. In practice, the relationship between Mars and the other Forge worlds resembles a feudal system, with Mars as the suzerain and the other Forge worlds as vassals who owe loyalty but retain significant autonomy. The Fabricators are supported by the Magi, tech priests who have achieved mastery in specific fields of technological endeavor. A Magos represents the pinnacle of achievement within their chosen discipline, whether that's biology, physics, engineering, or any of countless other specializations. The path to becoming a Magos typically takes centuries, requiring the accumulation of knowledge and the completion of increasingly difficult projects. Many tech priests never achieve this rank, spending their entire lives as skilled technicians, but never reaching the level of expertise required for true mastery. Within the ranks of the Magi, there are numerous subclassifications based on area of specialization. Magos Biologists focus on the study of organic life and the creation of biological weapons and defenses. Genitors delve into the mysteries of genetics, creating new strains of servitors and attempting to improve the human genome within the bounds of acceptable modification. Artisans dedicate themselves to the creation and restoration of weapons of war, from simple laser guns to the most complex plasma weapons. Logists serve as analysts and statisticians, using their computational abilities to predict future trends and optimize Mechanicus operations. Among the Magi, those who demonstrate exceptional skill and have made significant contributions to the quest for knowledge may be elevated to the rank of Archmagos. These individuals represent the absolute elite of the tech priesthood, their knowledge encompassing multiple disciplines and their authority extending across entire forge complexes, or even multiple forge worlds. An archmagos might command expeditionary fleets, oversee major research projects, or serve as an advisor to fabricator generals. They are the closest thing the Mechanicus has to celebrities, their names known across the Imperium for their discoveries and innovations. Special titles exist for magi who take on specific roles. A Magos Dominus commands the military forces of the Mechanicus, leading armies of Scitarii and cohorts of Cybernetica robots into battle. An Archmagos Dominus holds the same position, but at a higher level, perhaps commanding the forces of an entire forge world. These warrior priests combine technical expertise with tactical acumen, ensuring that the Mechanicus can defend its holdings and project power across the galaxy when necessary. Below the Magi are the vast ranks of ordained tech priests, individuals who have completed their basic training and been initiated into the full mysteries of the cult Mechanicus. These tech priests serve in countless roles throughout the Mechanicus hierarchy, from maintaining individual systems to overseeing small workshops to serving as representatives to other imperial institutions. Most tech priests remain at this level for their entire lives, which may span centuries thanks to bionic augmentation and life extension technologies. The lowest rank of actual tech priests are the engineers, who serve as the interface between the Mechanicus and the wider Imperium. These are the tech priests assigned to Imperial Guard regiments, Space Marine chapters, and naval vessels to maintain their equipment and perform necessary repairs. Engineers are often looked down upon by their more senior colleagues as little better than glorified technicians, but their role is absolutely vital to the Imperium's continued functioning. Without engineers, the vast military apparatus of the Imperium would grind to a halt within weeks. Supporting the tech priests are the servitors, lobotomized humans whose brains have been wiped and reprogrammed to perform specific tasks. The creation of servitors is one of the more disturbing practices of the Mechanicus, as it involves taking living humans and reducing them to the level of biological robots. Some servitors are created from vat-grown clones or criminals sentenced to this fate, but others are simply tech priests who have failed in their duties or fallen from favor. The message is clear. Failure within the Mechanicus can result in the loss of not just one's position, but one's very humanity. At the very bottom of the Mechanicus hierarchy are the menials, baseline humans who perform tasks too complex for servitors, but not important enough to waste tech priest time on. These workers maintain the vast industrial complexes of the forge worlds, loading raw materials, monitoring production lines, and performing the countless small tasks that keep the manufacturers running. Their lives are harsh and short by Imperium standards, with most dying young from exposure to toxic chemicals, industrial accidents, or simply from the grinding exhaustion of endless labor. The Mechanicus is also organized into various orders, or holy brotherhoods, dedicated to specific aspects of the machine cult's mission. The Legio Cybernetica manages the robotic cohorts that serve as shock troops in Mechanicus armies. The Order Reductor specializes in siege warfare and the destruction of enemy fortifications. The Centurio Ordinatus commands the Ordinatus weapons, massive war machines built for specific purposes that are too large and powerful to be deployed casually. Each order has its own traditions, rituals, and areas of expertise, and membership in a particular order carries significant prestige. Another important division within the Mechanicus is between the Explorators and the forge-bound tech priests. Explorators are those who venture out into the galaxy in search of lost technology and forgotten STC templates. They crew massive Arc Mechanicus vessels equipped with the most advanced sensors and laboratories, venturing into dangerous regions of space where others dare not go. The Explorators are often more flexible in their thinking than their forge-bound colleagues, having been exposed to strange Xenos technologies and anomalous phenomena that don't fit neatly into Mechanicus orthodoxy. The Collegia Titanica deserves special mention as a semi-autonomous organization within the Mechanicus. The tech priests who serve the Titan legions, known as moderati, princeps, and tech priests, secutor, form their own hierarchy with traditions that date back to the dark age of technology. While they owe allegiance to the fabricator general, like all members of the Mechanicus, the Titan legions maintain a degree of independence and often pursue their own agendas in service to the machine god. The religious aspect of the Mechanicus hierarchy cannot be overlooked. Tech priests advance not just through technical achievement, but also through demonstrations of faith and piety. The performance of sacred rituals, the proper observance of holy days, and the completion of pilgrimages to sacred sites all contribute to a tech priest's status within the organization. Those who show particular devotion may be inducted into the electro-priests, fanatical warriors who channel electrical energy through their bodies and believe themselves to be living conduits for the power of the machine god. This complex hierarchy serves multiple purposes. It provides clear lines of authority and responsibility, ensuring that the vast industrial empire of the Mechanicus can function efficiently. It creates a meritocratic path for advancement, allowing talented individuals to rise through the ranks based on their achievements. And it reinforces the religious nature of the Mechanicus, with each level of the hierarchy representing not just greater temporal power, but also deeper spiritual understanding of the machine god's mysteries. Yet the hierarchy also creates problems. The rigid structure can stifle innovation, as lower-ranking tech priests must defer to their superiors even when they have better solutions to technical problems. The emphasis on specialization can lead to tunnel vision, with magi becoming so focused on their particular field that they ignore broader implications of their work. And the political infighting that inevitably accompanies any hierarchical organization can lead to resources being wasted on internal conflicts rather than being devoted to the quest for knowledge or the defense of the Imperium. The Forge Worlds, bastions of the machine. God. Across the galaxy, hundreds of Forge Worlds labor in service to the Omnissiah, each one a planet-sized industrial complex dedicated to the production of the weapons, vehicles, and equipment that keep the Imperium functioning. These worlds represent the physical manifestation of the Adeptus Mechanicus's power, and each has developed its own distinct character, specializations, and traditions over the millennia. To understand the Mechanicus is to understand these Forge Worlds, for they are where the abstract theological principles of the machine cult meet the harsh reality of industrial production. Mars, the red planet, stands as the first among equals in this constellation of industrial worlds. As the birthplace of the cult Mechanicus and the seat of the Fabricator General, Mars holds a special place in the hearts of all tech priests. The planet's surface is almost entirely covered with forge temples, manufactorums, and industrial complexes that have been built and rebuilt over 10,000 years. The ancient surface features of Mars have long since been buried beneath layers of construction, with only a few protected sites like Olympus Mons and the Noctis Labyrinthus remaining recognizable from the pre-industrial age. The Ring of Iron, a vast orbital construction that encircles Mars, serves as the primary shipyard for the Adeptus Mechanicus. Here, in massive void docks that dwarf entire cities, the Arc Mechanicus vessels and battleships of the Mechanicus fleet are built and maintained. The ring also houses countless smaller facilities, from weapons testing ranges to data processing centers to the quarters of the orbital tech priests, who prefer the clean environment of space to the polluted surface below. Mars specializes in the production of power armor and bolters, the signature equipment of the Space Marines, the Soulmagiciens. Forges of Mars produce more of these critical items than all other Forge Worlds combined. Their production techniques, honed over 10 millennia to achieve levels of quality that others can only aspire to match. When a Space Marine chapter requests new equipment, they turn first to Mars, knowing that Martian craftsmanship represents the highest standard available anywhere in the Imperium. Risa, one of the most powerful Forge Worlds in the eastern reaches of the galaxy, has earned its reputation through specialization in plasma technology. The tech priests of Ryza have perfected the art of containing and directing superheated plasma, creating weapons of devastating power that other Forge worlds struggle to replicate. The famous Lehman Russ Executioner pattern tank, with its plasma cannon main gun, originates from Ryza, as does the Stormblade Super Heavy tank. Ryza's distinctive orange and white color scheme sets its products apart from the standard red of Mars, a declaration of independence that speaks to the Forge world's pride in its achievements. The history of Ryza has been one of constant warfare. During the Horus Heresy, Ryza remained loyal to the Emperor and successfully repelled attacks from the Dark Mechanicum, though at terrible cost. Over 4/5 of the planet's infrastructure was destroyed in the fighting, requiring centuries to rebuild. In more recent times, Ryza has faced multiple greenskin invasions, fighting off not one, but two massive incursions that threatened to overwhelm the Forge world. Most recently, after the formation of the Great Rift, Ryza found itself besieged by demonic forces, saved only by the presence of Imperial Guard regiments that happened to be stationed there following the Greenskin Wars. The surface of Ryza is divided into two primary continents, prosperity and erudition. The continent of prosperity is older and more heavily industrialized, its resources largely depleted after millennia of exploitation. The continent of erudition represents newer development, with the hierophant techness of Ryza housing their primary forges in this region. Beneath the Forge City of Endeavor lie the War Vaults of Ryza, sealed repositories of forbidden weapons that can only be opened on the order of the Fabricator General of Mars, or in times of direct existential threat to the Forge world. Metallica, situated dangerously close to the Orc Empire of Sharadon, has developed a military culture born of constant warfare. The Forge world's forces are known for their relentless advance, marching forward under withering enemy fire without pause or hesitation. This doctrine of continuous offensive pressure, combined with the deafening noise produced by Metallica's Skitarii forces, has earned them a fearsome reputation. The planet's distinctive white and red color scheme is instantly recognizable on battlefields across the galaxy. The Elucidon Schism, a civil war between different factions of electro-priests, hit Metallica particularly hard. For several hundred years, Fulgurite and Corpuscarii electro-priests fought each other in the streets and forges of Metallica, their philosophical disagreements about the proper worship of electrical energy escalating into violent conflict. The schism only ended when the demon Primarch Angron invaded Armageddon, forcing the warring factions to unite against the greater threat. More recently, Metallica contributed substantial forces to the Diamor campaign during the 13th Black Crusade, and faced another Orc invasion shortly after the Plague Wars. Styges 8 represents a different approach to the Mechanicus philosophy. This large Forge world, actually a moon orbiting a massive gas giant in the Vulcanus binary star system, is known for its secretiveness and its willingness to use technologies that other Forge worlds consider suspect or outright forbidden. The tech priests of Styges 8 employ stealth technologies and sensor-scrambling devices, allowing their forces to approach enemies undetected before unleashing devastating firepower. This preference for subterfuge over direct confrontation has earned Styges 8 a reputation for being untrustworthy, even by Mechanicus standards. Rumors persist that Styges 8 maintains regular contact with xenospecies, trading technology and information in violation of Imperial law. These accusations are never proven, and the Fabricator General of Styges 8 vehemently denies any such impropriety, but the whispers continue. What is known for certain is that Styges 8's explorator fleets venture further into unexplored space than those of most other Forge worlds, returning with strange artifacts and technologies that don't match any known STC patterns. Whether these are human inventions from lost colonies or Xenos technology adapted for Imperial use remains a source of heated debate. Graia occupies a strategic position along major shipping lanes and has built its reputation on logical efficiency and unwavering dedication to the Emperor. The tech priests of Graia pride themselves on their rationality, approaching every problem with cold calculation and accepting no excuse for failure. This unyielding mindset makes them formidable defenders, as they will hold their positions to the last rather than retreat from a battle they believe can be won. The planet's forces also possess unusual resistance to psychic attacks, a trait attributed to their extensive neural augmentation and the suppression of emotional responses. Lucius has carved out a niche as the premier producer of teleportation technology within the Imperium. The tech priests of this forge world have mastered the complex calculations required for safe teleportation, allowing their forces to deploy with a speed and precision that catches enemies off guard. Lucius armor plating is also highly regarded, incorporating advanced alloys and energy-dissipating structures that provide superior protection compared to standard patterns. The Lucian pattern lasgun, while produced in smaller numbers than the more common Cadian pattern, is prized for its reliability and accuracy. Agrippina holds the dubious distinction of being located perilously close to the Eye of Terror, the largest warp storm in the galaxy and the home of the traitor legions. This proximity has made Agrippina a frequent target for chaos raids and black crusades, forcing the Forge world to maintain permanent wartime footing. The tech priests of Agrippina have developed expertise in counter-chaos technologies, including weapons specifically designed to destroy demon engines and systems hardened against scrap code attacks. Following the formation of the Great Rift, Agrippina found itself even more isolated and under even greater threat, but it continues to hold firm as a bastion of the Imperium against the forces of darkness. Vos Prime distinguished itself during the Great Crusade as the center of Legio Cybernetica development. Though battle automata produced by Vos Prime were considered superior to those of other Forge worlds, their programming more sophisticated and their weapon systems more devastating. However, the Forge world suffered terribly during the Horus Heresy when many of its battle automata were corrupted by scrap code and turned against their creators. The trauma of this betrayal led to Vos Prime largely abandoning the development of autonomous robots, instead focusing on other areas of military technology. Griffon 4 was once one of the Imperium's premier manufacturers of Imperial Guard vehicles, producing chimeras, Lehman Russ tanks, and countless other armored vehicles in vast quantities. The Forge world's destruction during Hive Fleet Leviathan's invasion of the galaxy was a catastrophic blow to the Mechanicus and the Imperium as a whole. The loss of Griffoni 4's production capacity has never been fully replaced, and the gap in tank production continues to hamper Imperial military operations even centuries after the Forge world's fall. Deimos holds a unique position as the moon of Mars and the homeworld of the Grey Knights, the Space Marine chapter dedicated to fighting demonic threats. The Forge world specializes in producing equipment for the Grey Knights, including their distinctive Nemesis Force weapons and psychically attuned armor. The close relationship between Deimos and the Grey Knights has led to unusual cross-pollination of knowledge, with tech priests learning about demonic manifestation from the Knights, while sharing technological insights in return. Triplex Foal earned its reputation as specialists in the recovery and study of standard template constructs, the holy grail of the Mechanicus's quest for knowledge. The explorator fleets launched from Triplex Foal have recovered more complete STC systems than those of any other Forge world, though even they have never found a fully intact and functional STC constructor. The expertise developed in analyzing fragmentary STC data has made Triplex Foal invaluable to the wider Mechanicus, as other Forge worlds send their most puzzling archaeological finds to be studied by Foal's specialists. Each of these Forge worlds, and hundreds of others besides, contributes to the industrial might of the Adeptus Mechanicus. Together, they produce enough weapons, ammunition, vehicles, and equipment to supply the Imperial Guard's countless regiments, the Space Marine chapters, the Imperial Navy, and all the other military organizations that defend the Imperium. The diversity of the Forge worlds, with each one developing its own specializations and traditions, ensures that the Mechanicus is not a monolithic entity, but rather a complex ecosystem of competing and cooperating industrial powers, all united in service to the machine god and the Omnissiah. The quest for knowledge and sacred technology. At the heart of the Adeptus Mechanicus's philosophy lies the quest for knowledge, the sacred duty to recover, preserve, and understand the technological achievements of humanity's past. This is not merely academic curiosity or scientific inquiry in the conventional sense. For the tech priests of Mars, the pursuit of knowledge is a religious obligation, a way of coming closer to understanding the will of the machine god and the mysteries of the Omnissiah. Every recovered STC fragment, every successfully reverse-engineered Xenos device, every rediscovered manufacturing technique represents a step forward in this eternal quest. The Standard Template Construct, or STC, occupies a central place in Mechanicus theology and practice. These devices, created during the dark age of technology, contained the compressed knowledge needed to manufacture complex items using only raw materials and the template itself. An STC could produce anything from a simple farming implement to an advanced fusion reactor with the same ease and reliability. During humanity's golden age, STCs allowed even the most isolated colony to maintain a high level of technology, as they didn't need to understand the principles behind what they were creating, only how to operate the STC itself. The collapse of human civilization during the Age of Strife destroyed most of these precious devices. Some were lost when the colonies they served were destroyed. Others were damaged beyond repair by warfare or simple neglect. Many were deliberately sabotaged by the men of iron during their rebellion, denying humanity access to the knowledge they contained. What remained were fragments, partial templates that could produce only portions of a complete design, or corrupted data cores that had to be painstakingly reconstructed bit by bit. For the Adeptus Mechanicus, the recovery of a complete STC template would be the greatest achievement imaginable, a discovery that would justify any sacrifice and earn eternal glory for those involved. Even partial templates, or STC fragments, command tremendous value. When an explorator fleet discovers STC data, entire battle fleets may be dispatched to secure it. Forge worlds have gone to war over the right to study particularly valuable finds. The political and religious significance of STCs cannot be overstated within Mechanicus culture. The quest for knowledge manifests most visibly in the explorator fleets that venture into the unknown regions of the galaxy. These expeditions, launched from Forge worlds across the Imperium, search abandoned human colonies, pre-imperial ruins, and even Xenos worlds in hopes of finding lost technology. The Arc Mechanicus vessels that serve as the flagships of these fleets are among the largest ships in Imperial service, mobile Forge worlds in their own right, equipped with laboratories, manufactorums, and arsenals capable of supporting years-long expeditions into deep space. The tech priests who crew explorator fleets tend to be more flexible in their thinking than their forge-bound colleagues. Constant exposure to alien environments, strange phenomena, and technologies that don't match known paradigms has taught them to think creatively and question assumptions. This makes them valuable, but also potentially dangerous from an orthodox perspective, as their willingness to consider new ideas can shade into the kind of innovative thinking that the Mechanicus officially condemns as tech heresy. The prohibition against innovation represents one of the fundamental contradictions at the heart of Mechanicus philosophy. The tech priests claim to worship knowledge and the pursuit of understanding, yet they forbid the creation of new technologies or the modification of existing STC patterns. This seeming paradox stems from the traumatic experiences of the Age of Strife, when humanity's innovative tendencies led to the creation of artificial intelligence and other technologies that nearly destroyed the species. The Mechanicus believes that humanity already achieved technological perfection during the dark age of full technology, and that any deviation from those ancient patterns can only lead to inferior results or outright disaster. This conservative approach to technology has both advantages and disadvantages. On the positive side, it has prevented the kind of reckless experimentation that might lead to another catastrophe, like the rebellion of the Men of Iron. It has also ensured a degree of standardization across the Imperium, with weapons and equipment from different forge worlds generally being compatible and using similar principles of operation. But it has also meant that the Imperium is fighting with essentially the same technology it had 10,000 years ago, while its enemies evolve and adapt. The concept of tech heresy encompasses any violation of the sacred principles that govern proper interaction with technology. The creation of artificial intelligence represents the most serious form of tech heresy, punishable by immediate execution and the destruction of all the heretic's work. But many other activities also fall under this category. Modifying an STC pattern, even to improve its performance, is considered heretical. Creating entirely new technologies is forbidden. Even studying certain areas of knowledge, such as the manipulation of the human genome or the direct harnessing of warp energies, can result in accusations of tech heresy. The punishment for tech heresy is severe and certain. Those convicted of this crime are stripped of their rank and status, their bodies disassembled for parts, and their consciousness erased or reprogrammed to serve as a servitor. This fate serves as a powerful deterrent, preventing most tech priests from straying too far from orthodoxy, no matter how promising a line of research might appear. Yet there are always those willing to risk everything in pursuit of forbidden knowledge, and the Mechanicus maintains entire organizations dedicated to hunting down and eliminating these heretics before they can do lasting damage. The practical reality of the Mechanicus's approach to technology is more nuanced than the official doctrine suggests. While openly creating new technology is forbidden, interpreting and implementing existing STC templates allows for a surprising degree of variation. Different forge worlds produce different patterns of the same basic design, each one claiming that their version represents the most faithful implementation of the original template. These pattern variations allow for de facto innovation, while maintaining the fiction that nothing truly new is being created. Similarly, the distinction between repair and modification can be deliberately blurred when convenient. A tech priest might claim to be restoring a damaged weapon to its original specification, while actually introducing subtle improvements in performance. As long as the modifications aren't too obvious and can be justified as returning the device to its proper form, they're unlikely to attract accusations of tech heresy. This creative interpretation of the rules allows the Mechanicus to adapt to changing circumstances while maintaining ideological purity. The study of Xenos technology occupies an ambiguous position in Mechanicus doctrine. On one hand, Xenos are viewed as abominations to be destroyed, and their technology is seen as inherently inferior to human designs. On the other hand, the Mechanicus recognizes that alien races sometimes develop solutions to problems that might provide insights into human technology. The official position is that Xenos technology should be studied only to better understand how to destroy it. But in practice, some tech priests engage in much more detailed analysis, seeking to understand the principles underlying alien devices and potentially applying those principles to Imperial technology. Archaeotech, the term for human technology from before the Age of Strife, occupies a position of reverence in Mechanicus culture. These ancient devices are considered superior to anything that can be produced in the current age, preserved examples of humanity's lost golden age. When archaeotech is discovered, it is carefully preserved and studied, with tech priests spending centuries attempting to understand its mechanisms and replicate its capabilities. The most valuable archaeotech finds their way to Mars itself, where they are enshrined in sacred repositories and studied by the most senior magi. The relationship between the Mechanicus and other imperial institutions regarding technology is complex and often fraught with tension. The Mechanicus maintains a monopoly on technological knowledge, which gives them tremendous leverage over everyone from the administratum to the space marines. No other organization is permitted to conduct technological research or manufacture advanced equipment without Mechanicus oversight. This monopoly is jealously guarded, with the Mechanicus using its political power to suppress any attempts at independent technological development. Yet this monopoly also creates dependencies that the Mechanicus must manage carefully. The Imperium's military forces rely on the Mechanicus for their equipment, which gives the tech priests significant influence over imperial military policy. But if the Mechanicus were to withhold support from the Imperial Guard or Navy, they would quickly find themselves facing political pressure from other High Lords, or even direct military action. The Mechanicus must balance its desire for independence with the reality that it exists within a larger imperial structure that expects cooperation and service. The quest for knowledge, for all its religious trappings and conservative methodology, represents humanity's desperate attempt to recover what was lost during the Age of Strife. The Adeptus Mechanicus preserves not just technology, but the memory of what humanity once was, a civilization that spanned the galaxy and commanded powers that seem like magic to the degraded present. Whether this preservation will eventually lead to a new golden age, or merely delay the final decline into barbarism, remains an open question, one that the tech priests answer with faith, ritual, and the endless churning of their forges. Titans, Skitarii, and the armies of the machine. God. When the Adeptus Mechanicus goes to war, it does so with forces that embody the fusion of faith and technology that defines the cult of the machine. From the towering god engines of the Collegia Titanica to the cybernetically enhanced soldiers of the Skitarii legions, from the mindless battle automata of the Legio Cybernetica to the noble knights of the Questoris households, the armies of the Mechanicus represent humanity's technological might made manifest on the battlefield. These forces fight not for glory or conquest, but in service to the quest for knowledge and the defense of the machine god's domains. The Titans stand as the most iconic and awe-inspiring weapons in the Mechanicus arsenal. These, colossal war machines, some standing over 40 meters tall, are among the most powerful weapons ever created by humanity. Each Titan houses the consciousness of a princeps, a human pilot who has been neurally bonded to the god engine's machine spirit, creating a fusion of man and machine that allows for coordination impossible with conventional vehicles. When a Titan walks, the ground trembles beneath its feet. When it fires its weapons, entire enemy formations are obliterated in seconds. The Collegia Titanica, the organization responsible for maintaining and deploying the Titan legions, predates the formation of the Imperium itself. Many Titan legions trace their lineage back to the Dark Age of technology, when these machines were built to serve as mobile fortresses and construction equipment for building continent-spanning cities. Over the millennia, as the knowledge of how to create new Titans was lost, these ancient god engines became increasingly precious, each one, and song, irreplaceable relic of humanity's past glory. The largest Titans are the Imperator-class god engines, massive constructs that dwarf even other Titans. An Imperator Titan can carry entire companies of infantry in its body, deploy void shields strong enough to deflect orbital bombardment, and mount weapons powerful enough to level cities. These behemoths are so rare and precious that their deployment requires the approval of the Fabricator General of Mars, and each one lost to enemy action is considered a catastrophe for the entire Mechanicus. More common, though still extremely rare by the standards of conventional military equipment, are the Warlord-class Titans. These war machines strike a balance between firepower and mobility, carrying devastating weapons while remaining nimble enough to engage in tactical maneuvers. A single Warlord Titan can turn the tide of an entire campaign, its void shields and thick armor allowing it to wade through enemy fire that would destroy lesser vehicles, while its plasma annihilators and volcano cannons reduce enemy fortifications to molten slag. The Reaver and Warhound classes represent the smaller, more numerous Titans in Imperial service. Reavers serve as the backbone of most Titan legions, versatile enough to engage a variety of enemy types while still possessing the firepower to threaten even heavily armored targets. Warhounds, the smallest of the true Titans, operate as scouts and outriders for larger god engines, using their speed and agility to outmaneuver enemies and strike at vulnerable points. Despite being the smallest Titans, Warhounds still tower over conventional vehicles and carry weapons that can destroy entire tank companies. The bonding process that creates a princeps is a mysterious and dangerous procedure that only a tiny fraction of candidates survive. Those who do survive find their consciousness permanently altered, their thoughts flowing through the Titan systems as naturally as they once controlled their own bodies. Over time, many princeps begin to merge with their Titans' machine spirits, their personalities blending until it becomes difficult to say where the human ends and the machine begins. This fusion represents the ultimate expression of Mechanicus faith, the complete union of flesh and steel in service to the machine god. The Skitarii represent the Mechanicus' most numerous military forces, cybernetically enhanced soldiers who have traded much of their humanity for combat effectiveness. A Skitarii warrior typically possesses augmented strength, enhanced reflexes, improved sensory systems, and modified organs that allow them to fight in environments that would kill a normal human. Many have had their emotional responses suppressed or eliminated entirely, turning them into cold, efficient killers who execute their orders without hesitation or mercy. Skitarii Rangers serve as the scouts and marksmen of Mechanicus armies, equipped with galvanic rifles that fire electromagnetically accelerated rounds capable of penetrating even heavy armor. Their augmented eyes can see in multiple spectrums simultaneously, and their enhanced cognitive processors can calculate trajectories and compensate for environmental factors with inhuman precision. Rangers often operate ahead of main battle lines, gathering intelligence and eliminating enemy leadership before the main assault begins. Skitarii vanguards specialize in close-range combat, armed with radium carbines that fire radioactive rounds. The radiation these weapons emit is hazardous even to the vanguard themselves, but their augmented bodies can tolerate doses that would kill a normal human within minutes. The vanguard advance relentlessly into enemy fire, their resilience and firepower overwhelming defensive positions through sheer attrition. Behind their faceless masks and emotionless obedience, there remains some spark of the humans they once were, though whether that represents hope or tragedy is a question each observer must answer for themselves. The Kataphron battle servitors represent the next step beyond the Skitarii, beings who have been so heavily modified that they can barely be considered human at all. These cyborg warriors are built around a human torso and brain, but everything below the chest has been replaced with tracked locomotion systems and heavy weapon mounts. Kataphron destroyers carry grav cannons and plasma culverins, weapons too powerful for infantry to wield, while Kataphron breachers serve as mobile fortifications, their arc rifles and hydraulic claws making them deadly in both ranged and close combat. The Electro-Priests occupy a unique position within Mechanicus military forces. These fanatical warriors believe themselves to be living conduits for the machine god's power, channeling electrical energy through their bodies and using it as a weapon. Corpuscari Electro-Priests project bolts of lightning from their hands, frying enemy soldiers and overloading their equipment. Fulgurite Electro-Priests drain the life force from their enemies on contact, storing that energy in special capacitors and releasing it in devastating bursts. Both varieties are utterly fearless, convinced that death in service to the machine god will result in their consciousness being uploaded directly into the afterlife. The Legio Cybernetica controls vast armies of battle automata, robots programmed to follow the orders of their tech priest controllers. These machines range from the massive Castellan robots, lumbering gun platforms that can absorb tremendous damage while laying down withering fire, to the more specialized Thanatar siege automata, designed specifically for breaking enemy fortifications. The trauma of the Horus Heresy, when many Cybernetica robots were corrupted by scrap code and turned against their creators, has led to strict protocols governing their use, with hardwired limitations preventing them from operating autonomously. The Onaga Dunecrawler serves as the Mechanicus's primary armored fighting vehicle, a multi-legged walker equipped with a variety of heavy weapons. Its unusual locomotion system allows it to traverse terrain that would bog down tracked or wheeled vehicles, making it ideal for the varied battlefields where the Mechanicus fights. The Dunecrawler's neutron laser, or eradication beamer, can destroy even heavily armored targets, while its Cognis-heavy stubber provides anti-infantry support. The Iron Strider Ballistarii and Sidonian Dragoons provide mobile firepower and close combat capability respectively. These two-legged walkers carry a single pilot perched atop a tall chassis, giving them excellent visibility of the battlefield. Ballistarii typically mount twin Cognis las cannons or twin Cognis autocannons, providing long-range anti-vehicle support, while Dragoons charge into melee combat with taser lances that deliver devastating electrical shocks to enemy targets. The Knights of the Questores, Mechanicus, while technically independent from the Adeptus Mechanicus proper, fight alongside Mechanicus forces so regularly that they're considered an integral part of the Mechanicus military structure. These towering war machines, smaller than Titans but larger than conventional vehicles, are piloted by noble families who have maintained their traditions since the Age of Strife. Each knight is bound to a forge world through ancient oaths of loyalty, providing military service in exchange for technical support and the sacred rituals needed to maintain their god machines. The coordination of these diverse forces falls to the tech priest Dominus and their subordinate commanders, who direct the battle using a combination of tactical doctrine and real-time data analysis. Mechanicus armies fight according to carefully calculated plans, with every unit's deployment and every weapon's firing solution determined by complex algorithms. While this approach can seem rigid compared to the more flexible tactics of some Imperial armies, it also eliminates the chaos and confusion that plague less organized forces. The canticles of the Omnissiah, battle hymns broadcast across the Mechanicus battlenet, provide coordinated bonuses to friendly forces. These binary prayers synchronize the machine spirits of different units, enhancing their capabilities in specific ways depending on which canticle is chanted. The invocation of machine might increase the strength of all attacks, while the Shroud Psalm could provide protective cover through interference with enemy targeting systems. The power of these canticles demonstrates the Mechanicus belief that faith and technology are not separate but intimately intertwined. When the Adeptus Mechanicus commits its full military might to a campaign, the result is a combined arms force of terrifying effectiveness. Scutari Rangers scout ahead, identifying enemy positions and eliminating key targets. Titans stride forward, their void shields shimmering as they absorb enemy fire while their weapons level fortifications. Cataphron servitors grind through defensive lines, their heavy weapons suppressing enemy resistance. Electro-priests charge into melee combat, their faith making them immune to fear. And through it all, the tech priests direct the battle with cold calculation, adjusting their plans as data streams in from thousands of sensors and optical feeds. This is the might of the machine god made manifest, and before it, the enemies of the Omnissiah inevitably fall. Notable figures and their legacies. Throughout the 10,000-year history of the Adeptus Mechanicus, certain individuals have distinguished themselves through their contributions to the quest for knowledge, their military victories, or their theological innovations. These tech priests have left lasting legacies that continue to shape the Mechanicus in the current age, their names spoken with reverence in binary prayers, and their discoveries forming the foundation of technologies used across the Imperium. Archmagos, Dominus Belisarius Call, stands as perhaps the most influential and controversial tech priest of the current era. Already ancient at the dawn of the Imperium, Call has lived for over 10,000 years through a combination of advanced life extension technologies, extensive cybernetic replacement, and methods that many of his peers consider dangerously close to tech heresy. His most famous achievement is the creation of the Primaris Space Marines, a new generation of genetically enhanced warriors superior to their standard brethren in every measurable way. The Primaris project occupied Call for the entire span of the Imperium's history, commissioned by Reboot Guilliman before the Primarch's fall at the Battle of Thessaly. Call labored in secret for millennia, perfecting the genetic modifications and equipment that would make the Primaris Marines possible. When Guilliman was resurrected in the wake of the 13th Black Crusade, Call presented him with entire chapters of these new Space Marines, ready to reinforce the Imperium in its darkest hour. But Call's achievements extend far beyond the Primaris project. He has recovered more STC fragments than any other living tech priest, his explorator fleets venturing into the most dangerous regions of space in search of lost knowledge. He has created new patterns of vehicles and weapons that push the boundaries of what the Mechanicus considers acceptable innovation. And he has developed relationships with Xeno's species, most notably the Necrons, that many within the Mechanicus view as outright heresy, but that Call insists are necessary for humanity's survival. Call's willingness to innovate and collaborate with aliens has made him many enemies within the Mechanicus. Conservative tech priests view him as an arch-heretic who should have been executed long ago for his violations of sacred doctrine. Others tolerate him only because Reboot Guilliman provides political protection, and even the Primarch has expressed reservations about some of Call's methods, particularly his creation of an artificial intelligence known as the Call Inferior. Despite repeated requests, Guilliman has refused to appoint Call as Fabricator General of Mars, knowing that doing so would trigger a schism within the Mechanicus that might make the Horus heresy look minor by comparison. Yet, for all the controversy surrounding him, Call's contributions to the Imperium are undeniable. Without the Primaris Marines, the Imperium Sanctus might have fallen to the forces unleashed by the Great Rift. Without Call's technologies, the Indomitus Crusade would have lacked the weapons needed to reclaim world after world from the enemies of mankind. Like him or not, the Mechanicus and the wider Imperium need Belisarius Call, and that fact galls his critics more than anything else he has done. Archanland, active during the Great Crusade, earned immortality through his discoveries of STC templates that revolutionized Imperial warfare. His recovery of the Land Raider, a massive assault transport that became the primary armored vehicle for Space Marine forces, changed the nature of armored warfare across the Imperium. The Landspeeder, another of his discoveries, provided Space Marines with rapid response capability that complemented their existing tactical doctrine perfectly. Even the humble Landcrawler, a farming vehicle that became essential to agricultural worlds across the Imperium, bears his name. The fact that these vehicles are all named after Archanland rather than their original designers has been a source of some embarrassment to later tech priests, who recognize that it suggests more about Land's ego than about his actual role in creating these machines. But the pattern was established during the Great Crusade, and changing the nomenclature now would require altering millennia of documentation and tradition. Land himself met his end seeking further secrets beneath the surface of Mars, dying as he lived in pursuit of ancient wisdom. His name is invoked in prayers by tech priests who hope to emulate his success in recovering lost technologies. Fabricator General Kelbor Hal occupies a unique position in Mechanicus history, as both a visionary leader and the greatest traitor the organization has ever known. Before his fall to chaos, Kelbor Hal was widely respected as a brilliant administrator and theologian who guided Mars through a period of tremendous expansion during the early Great Crusade. His interpretation of Mechanicus doctrine, while unconventional, attracted many followers who appreciated his willingness to question established orthodoxy. Kelbor Hal's betrayal during the Horus Heresy nearly destroyed the Adeptus Mechanicus and set back the quest for knowledge by centuries. The schism of Mars that resulted from his treachery killed millions of tech priests and destroyed irreplaceable technology that can never be recovered. His name is now spoken only as a curse, a warning of what happens when the thirst for knowledge overcomes loyalty and faith. Yet even in condemnation, Kelbor-Hal's influence persists, as the restrictions and safeguards implemented after the heresy were direct responses to his betrayal. Coriel Zeth, mistress of the Magma City, represents the loyal tech priests who resisted Kelbor-Hal's corruption during the Schism of Mars. Her defiance of the Fabricator General's treachery made her Forge City a rallying point for loyalist forces, and her eventual death, defending it against overwhelming traitor numbers, earned her martyrdom. Tech priests who value loyalty and integrity above personal ambition invoke Zeth's name as an example of proper dedication to the machine god and the Omnissiah. Udia Raskian, the current Fabricator General of Mars and a High Lord of Terra, has transformed himself so extensively that he barely resembles anything human, requiring bulk lifters to transport his massive cybernetic body. Raskian literally towers over the other High Lords during council meetings, a physical manifestation of the Mechanicus's power and independence. His relationship with Robuta Guilliman is complex, as he has professed loyalty to the Primarch, while simultaneously working to preserve Mechanicus autonomy in the face of Guilliman's efforts to centralize Imperial authority. Delphan Gruss, a Magos active during the Horus Heresy, made significant contributions to the development of weapons and armor used by the Loyalist forces. His innovations in plasma weaponry helped offset some of the advantages the traitor forces gained from their embrace of chaos-corrupted technologies. While not as famous as some of his contemporaries, Gruss represents the countless tech priests who served faithfully during the Imperium's darkest hours, advancing the quest for knowledge even as war raged around them. The legacy of these individuals, and countless others, shapes the modern Adeptus Mechanicus. Every STC fragment recovered, every new manufacturing technique developed, every theological debate resolved, contributes to the accumulated knowledge of the organization. The tech priests of the current era stand on the shoulders of 10,000 years of predecessors, inheriting both their achievements and their failures, their wisdom and their mistakes. Understanding the history of the Mechanicus means understanding these individuals and the choices they made, for good or ill, in service to the machine god and the Omnissiah. The modern era and the age of the Dark Imperium, the formation of the Great Rift in the closing years of the 41st Millennium, brought catastrophic changes to the Imperium of Man, and the Adeptus Mechanicus was not spared from the devastation. The massive warp storm that split the galaxy in two severed communication between Mars and hundreds of Forge worlds, disrupting the carefully maintained supply chains that kept the Imperium's war machine functioning. Forge worlds, on the wrong side of the rift, found themselves isolated, forced to make desperate decisions about how to survive in the face of unprecedented demonic incursions and Xenos invasions. The Cicatrix Maledictum, as the Great Rift is formally known, unleashed waves of chaos corruption across the galaxy. Forge worlds that had stood firm for 10,000 years fell to demonic invasion within weeks. The scrap code that had been used to such devastating effect during the Horus Heresy returned with renewed virulence, corrupting machine spirits and turning loyal equipment against its operators. Tech priests watched in horror as their most sacred technologies became vectors for demonic possession, their blessed manufactorums transformed into gateways for the forces of the warp. Simultaneously, the Mechanicus faced an unexpected threat from the Necrons. The massive influx of chaos energies into real space triggered anti-warp protocols in every Necron tomb world, awakening countless legions of these ancient machines from their millions-year slumber. The Necrons immediately began attacking Mechanicus holdings across the galaxy, from mining colonies to night worlds to forge worlds themselves. The reason for this coordinated assault remained unclear to most Imperial observers, but Belisarius Cawl understood what others did not. The Necrons were reclaiming technology that had been stolen from them in the distant past, devices that predated even the Dark Age of technology. The Technomandrites of Magistrach, Necron techno-mages, who had been destroyed by their own kind eons before humanity even existed, returned to seek vengeance and dominion over the other Necron dynasties. Their mastery of technology, that made even Mechanicus innovations look primitive, posed an existential threat to every Forge world they targeted. Battle Group Hephaestus, led by Belisarius Cawl himself, was dispatched to the Nephilim sector to combat this threat, engaging in battles that pitted the accumulated technological knowledge of 10,000 years of Mechanicus development against sciences older than recorded human history. The resurrection of Rabuta Guilliman provided the Imperium with hope in its darkest hour, and the Adeptus Mechanicus played a crucial role in this miracle. Belisarius Cawl's Armor of Fate, commissioned by Guilliman himself 10 millennia earlier, possessed life-sustaining technologies advanced enough to heal even the mortal wound the Primarch had suffered during the heresy. Working alongside the Inari Elder, whose goddess of death provided the spiritual component necessary to restore Guilliman's fading life force, Cawl achieved what should have been impossible: the resurrection of a Primarch. Guilliman's return transformed the political landscape of the Imperium, and by extension, the position of the Adeptus Mechanicus within it. The Primarch launched the Indomitus Crusade to stabilize the Imperium Sanctus, the portion of the Imperium that remained on the Terran side of the Great Rift. The Mechanicus contributed massively to this effort, providing not just the Primaris Space Marines that Cawl had created, but also new patterns of vehicles, weapons, and equipment designed specifically for the challenges of the Dark Imperium. The Repulsor Grav Tank, the Redemptor Dreadnought, and countless other innovations flowed from Mechanicus forges to equip the crusading forces. Yet Guilliman's relationship with the Mechanicus remained complex and often tense. He recognized their invaluable contributions and understood that the Imperium could not function without them. But he also harbored deep suspicions about the organization, particularly regarding figures like Belisarius Cawl. The Primarch viewed the creation of artificial intelligence as anathema, having seen firsthand during the Great Crusade what such technologies could do if they turned against humanity. Cawl's development of the Cawl Inferior, an AI that possessed the Archmagos' personality and knowledge, represented exactly the kind of innovation that Guilliman believed would inevitably lead to disaster. The political tension extended to the issue of Mechanicus independence. Guilliman sought to centralize imperial authority and improve coordination between different imperial institutions. This necessarily meant reducing the autonomy that the Adeptus Mechanicus had enjoyed since the Treaty of Mars, bringing them more firmly under imperial oversight and control. Fabricator General Udia Raskian and his allies resisted these efforts, arguing that the Mechanicus' special status was essential to maintaining their effectiveness and preserving the quest for knowledge. The conflicts of the Indomitus Crusade tested Mechanicus forces in ways they hadn't experienced since the Horus Heresy. On Vigilus, a strategically vital world near the Great Rift, Mechanicus forces fought desperate battles against Chaos cultists, Orc hordes, and Genestealer cult insurgents, all while trying to maintain the planet's crucial infrastructure. The Nachmund Gauntlet, a relatively stable corridor through the Great Rift, became a focus of Mechanicus efforts to maintain contact with Forge worlds on the far side of the Rift, with massive resources devoted to fortifying the worlds along this route. The Plague Wars in Ultramar saw Mechanicus forces fighting alongside Primaris Space Marines against the forces of Nurgle, the Chaos God of disease and decay. The corruption spread by Nurgle's demons proved particularly difficult for the Mechanicus to combat, as it affected not just biological organisms, but also machinery and data systems. Scrap code mutations that resembled disease more than programming errors plagued Mechanicus equipment, requiring constant purification rituals and sometimes the complete destruction of infected systems. Riser, one of the most powerful forge worlds in the Eastern Imperium, faced its own crisis when demonic forces invaded following the formation of the Great Rift. Only the presence of Imperial Guard regiments that had been stationed there to fight greenskin invasions prevented the forge world from falling entirely. The battle for Riser demonstrated both the vulnerability of even the mightiest forge worlds to warp-based attacks, and the importance of cooperation between the Mechanicus and other Imperial institutions. The Pariah Crusade, launched to investigate the mysterious Pariah Nexus region where the warp seemed unable to penetrate, involved significant Mechanicus participation. Belisarius Cawl himself accompanied strike forces into this anomalous region, seeking to understand the Blackstone technology that created the anti-warp effect. This research held implications far beyond mere scientific curiosity, as Blackstone might provide a way to close the Great Rift itself, healing the wound that had split the Imperium in two. The Necron's Cadian pylons, which had once held back the eye of terror before their destruction, demonstrated that such technology existed and could be deployed on a massive scale. In the current era, the Adeptus Mechanicus finds itself stretched to the breaking point. Forge worlds struggle to meet the Imperium's insatiable demand for weapons and equipment, while simultaneously defending against the unprecedented threats that emerged with the Great Rift. The conservative faction within the Mechanicus argues for maintaining traditional practices and avoiding innovation, fearing that desperation might lead to the kind of reckless experimentation that spawned the Dark Mechanicum. The progressive faction, increasingly centered around Belisarius Cawl and his supporters, insists that survival requires adaptation, and that clinging to 10,000-year-old doctrines will only accelerate the Imperium's decline. This tension between tradition and innovation defines the modern Adeptus Mechanicus. Every decision about what technologies to develop, what research to pursue, and what risks to take carries profound implications not just for the Mechanicus, but for the entire Imperium. The outcome of this internal struggle will help determine whether humanity survives the age of the Dark Imperium or succumbs to the same forces that nearly destroyed it during the Age of Strife. The priests of the Machine God continue their sacred duties, chanting their binary prayers and performing their holy rituals, knowing that the fate of humanity may rest on their ability to balance faith with pragmatism, tradition with necessity. Conclusion: the eternal quest. As we reach the end of this comprehensive journey through the history of the Adeptus Mechanicus, we can appreciate the profound impact this organization has had on the fate of humanity across 10,000 years of struggle and sacrifice. From their origins as technologists clinging to survival in the underground warrens of Mars, to their current position as an indispensable pillar of the Imperium, the tech priests of the machine, God have demonstrated remarkable resilience and adaptability while maintaining the core of their faith through the darkest periods in human history. The Adeptus Mechanicus stands as a testament to the power of faith and knowledge working in concert. Their theology, which might seem strange or even contradictory to outsiders, has proven itself capable of preserving crucial technological knowledge through millennia of warfare, collapse, and reconstruction. The rituals that skeptics dismiss as superstition often encode genuine technical procedures, ensuring that knowledge survives even when understanding fails. The reverence for the machine that others mock as primitive has prevented the kind of reckless innovation that led to the catastrophes of the Age of Strife. Yet the Mechanicus also embodies the great tragedy of the Imperium of man. They preserve the achievements of the past, but struggle to create new achievements for the future. They worship knowledge while forbidding true innovation. They speak of logic and reason while basing their actions on faith and tradition. These contradictions make them simultaneously essential to humanity's survival and potentially an obstacle to humanity's evolution and advancement. The story of the Adeptus Mechanicus is far from over. In the age of the Dark Imperium, as the Great Rift threatens to tear the galaxy apart and ancient enemies awaken from their long sleep, the tech priests face challenges that will test their faith, their capabilities, and their very identity. Will they adapt to the new threats they face, or will they cling to traditions that may no longer serve them? Will figures like Belisarius Cawl succeed in dragging the Mechanicus toward innovation and progress, or will the conservative forces maintain their grip on orthodoxy? These questions will be answered in the fires of battles yet to be fought, on forge worlds that have not yet fallen, by tech priests who have not yet been born. What we can say with certainty is that the Imperium cannot survive without the Adeptus Mechanicus, the weapons that arm the Imperial Guard, the ships that carry armies across the void, the power armor worn by space marines, the sacred technology that maintains the Emperor's golden throne itself. All of these depend on the skill and dedication of the tech priests. When the Mechanicus fails, the Imperium falters. When the Mechanicus succeeds, humanity endures for another day, another year, another millennium. The binary hymns will continue to echo through forged temples across the galaxy. The sacred oils will flow in blessing over blessed machines. The quest for knowledge will send explorator fleets into the darkest reaches of space, seeking the lost wonders of humanity's golden age. And on distant battlefields, titans will stride forward in glory, while Skitarii march to their doom without fear, all in service to the Omnissiah and the Machine God who watches over them all. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into the complete history of the Adeptus Mechanicus, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more Warhammer 40,000 lore content. Your support helps me create more comprehensive explorations of the factions, characters, and events that make this universe so rich and compelling. The Emperor protects, and the Omnissiah guides. Thank you for watching.
I hope you guys enjoyed the story. Make sure to hit the subscribe, like, share button, whatever you want. Give me some feedback if there's any. And yeah, sleep well.